Good evening and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Every week, I have the pleasure and privilege of speaking and having meaningful conversations with authors, speakers, global thought leaders, and C-suite professionals. And today is no exception. When I think of creativity, innovation, technology, AI, futuristic, there's no other name in the world that comes to mind than James Taylor. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to James Taylor. Welcome, James.
Well, thank you, Gotham. It's great to be with you. I always love hanging out together, having our conversations, breaking some bread together. Unfortunately, we can't be together in person, which is a shame, but hopefully that's going to happen again soon.
Thank you. Well, we'll break bread virtually today and look forward to catching up in person one day soon. One thing we know, the pandemic, the change, the challenges, it hasn't stopped you or me from doing business, from staying connected with each other and exploring possibilities. One question I'd love to really start with yourself, which I really want to know, is what is your personal why and purpose? What gets James Taylor out of the bed every morning, making a difference, transforming leaders globally, helping organizations sort of succeed and thrive in this pandemic? So really the root of that is, what is your personal and why, and what's your purpose?
So my big person, my big why is about unlocking the creative potential. And I put a number on it because I always think to have a number on the end of something. So my personal one is to unlock the creative potential in 1 billion people. Wow. That's a scary number, and you never quite know, like, how 1 billion people. That sounds like a lot of people, but I think
you could just move to India, James, and we've got 1.3 billion here. I mean,
exactly. Do you know what it does? You know, when you put a number like that on it, sometimes it makes you have to think bigger, think in a slightly different ways. What got you to one place is not going to get you to the next place. And so, you know, like the stuff that you and I do together, you know, with rate selection, you know, places like India, places like parts of East Asia, Southeast Asia, a lot of the places I'm focused on, doing a lot of stuff in Latin America just before the all the lockdowns happened, because they have the populations where you can kind of do that thing at scale.
Absolutely. Oh, great. I mean, one thing the audience has always appreciated is a story, because that really gives them visual idea and understanding. Are there any one or two stories you could perhaps share from, you know, the recent times, which could really give the audiences a lot of clarity in how the possibilities are?
What I find very interesting just now, I've the huge privilege of working with lots of amazing different kind of companies over the past kind of 14 months or so. What was interesting for me in my speaking, we actually, like for many of us, in March 2020, I was speaking in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for a soft drinks company. And I think I managed to get the last flight out of Saudi Arabia before they closed the border.
Yes, I recall that post on LinkedIn that you shared.
Yeah, and at that point, you know, everything was closing down, and no one knew what was going to go on. And then, you know, I went from speaking really probably about 5 speaking engagements a month, and suddenly April just went boof. Everything was cancelled, like all of us, like all of our events were cancelled, conferences were cancelled. And then something really interesting happened. It was like, we hear about the kind of K-shaped recovery, and for me it was a V shape. It suddenly just went down in April, and then in May it was like boom. And so this year, as we're doing this together in 2021, we're doing this in July 2020, just put a date on it. This is by far my busiest July ever. So I'm doing like this week, I think I'm doing 4 events, and because they're all virtual, which you could never do before. So it's, I think, one of the interesting things, and I was talking to a client last week about it, and I'm doing an in-person event in Italy in September. And this is a company that's in the pharmaceutical industry.
All right.
And what we were both discussing, I was talking to the CEO, is that during this time, I think our productivity levels have actually stayed very high in lots of organizations. Like a lot of the companies I work with, whether it's Dell or, you know, clients that you and I work with together in India as well, their productivity levels have actually stayed really well. They managed to pivot. What I'm finding, though, is the creativity, the innovation kind of dropped, because so much of creativity and innovation happens when we're just having a conversation. We're going for coffee together. You know, we're breaking bread, as you're talking about. I think so many of those, the kernels of ideas come from those times. And I think what we're seeing just now is many ideas which are flourishing just now came from people breaking bread 2 years ago and having this conversation 2 or 3 years ago, and it's only kind of now starting to come through. So a lot of leaders are getting a little worried that we need people to start kind of coming back together. And I saw Andy Jassy the other day from Amazon, the new CEO of Amazon, saying we want people to start coming back together, collaborating, because innovation suffered. He said we're not riffing in the same way. So and we, there's exceptions to this. Like I was talking about the pharmaceutical company the other day, and they were saying they suddenly had to figure out how to get vaccines to people in pretty remote places. So they were renting camels, in certain parts like North Africa, in order to get vaccines across hillsides, and they were doing all kinds of things. So there has been a lot of creativity. We've adapted, but the real kind of like seismic innovation creativity, I think we need to kind of still come together. That's the value of doing events, I still think. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, one thing that comes to mind is the bigger the challenge, I feel the more creative, the more innovative we need to be. So I look at this time sort of as an opportunity that's presented itself, where we have to think, we have to be creative, and we have the opportunity to innovate, whatever the businesses may be. But are there some problems that you could share that you have actually solved with organizations?
Yeah, so a lot of the companies come to me usually for two different reasons. Sometimes they'll bring me in, like Cisco, for example, they might bring me into keynote to talk about artificial intelligence and this idea I talk about SuperCreativity, how humans are augmenting their human potential with things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, IoT. So, I mean, I'll just give you a very simple example. I was doing a lot of stuff in Latin America in 2019 and in Brazil, especially, and Ecuador. And one of the companies in Brazil is a company called Bradesco. They're a bank, one of the largest bank. They have about 4,000 branches. They even have a branch on a ship that goes down the Amazon River. And so when COVID hit, they got massive pressure on their phone lines, their internet banking, because everyone had to do their banking that way. And something that happened, and I do a lot of stuff with, folks who work in customer service. And one of the things that started happening is, I think generally people's tension's a little bit higher just now. People maybe have a little bit of a shorter fuse sometimes because people going through a lot of challenges in their businesses and their lives. And what was happening at Bradesco is when people were coming on the calls with their sales agents or their customer service, they were a little bit more aggressive. Cases of abuse were going up, especially towards female customer support agents. So they did a really interesting thing. Bradesco was already kind of leading in terms of artificial intelligence, using kind of chatbots, AI-powered chatbots. And you've spent a lot of time living in the UAE, and UAE was really kind of at the cutting edge. You and I did an event together. I think it was one of the government agencies there about how they were bringing chatbots in to help the citizens get better access to different services. Amazing.
Right. Yeah.
But one of the things that they noticed is abuse that was happening to customer service, and even people as they were typing in stuff. Even though they were talking to an AI, people were being kind of abusive towards the machine. And then what happened is when that person maybe eventually spoke to a human being, a customer service agent, that abuse was kind of carrying on. So what Bradesco did is they put an algorithm across the AI that spotted patterns. If people were being aggressive and abusive and they were using certain language, they would flag it up and saying, I don't think that language is appropriate. And then they would actually be talking about in terms of, especially towards female customer service agents, they were actually flagging things and just reflecting these back to the customer saying, that's quite an abusive thing to say. And then the AI was doing it. And so people kind of were calming down a little bit. So when they eventually spoke to the human, those people were receiving less abuse. So that's some of the stuff I speak about, which is like AI and human creativity, asking questions, how we could do things better. But the other side is around like pure kind of creativity training. And I was doing an event the other day for a company in I think it was in the UAE, and I was sharing with them something that Adobe do. And I think it's a perfect example of what I call inclusive innovation, where some of the best ideas in organizations come from the grassroots, that person that's on the front line in that organization.
Right.
And we just need to find ways of kind of filtering that, helping that kind of bubble up to the surface. And so what Adobe do is they have these boxes they call kick boxes, I think they're called. And what they are is in a box, it's got a little kind of guide for how to generate creative ideas. It's got some some kind of little cue cards, post-it notes, because we always need post-it notes.
Yes.
It's got a little notepad for bad ideas, because we have to generate a lot of bad ideas in order to get to the good ideas.
Absolutely.
$10 Starbucks card, so you can get a cup of tea or coffee. And then it's got $1,000 prepaid debit card that someone can use without ever having to ask their boss or their manager for authorization. And Adobe have given out 1,000 of these boxes. So that's $1 million of investment. And from that, they've generated 1,000 new ideas and really minimum viable products, pilots, little tests that these companies, individuals in the organizations have felt empowered to be able to create. And from that, they've taken about 28 of those and turned those red boxes, and they've given the best ideas, 28 of these, blue boxes. And these blue boxes have ended up being, got higher resources in them, and those blue boxes then end up being finished products. So that's just an example about ensuring that your greatest ideas might be sitting with that person on the front line, and you need to find a way of getting those ideas to the top and bringing those. So that's just, a couple of examples, either from the creativity, innovation stuff I talk about, or more on the AI, the future side.
That's a fantastic couple of stories. The last one really resonated with me because I sensed there was empowerment, there was sort of engagement, and to some extent inspiration, and they sort of took ownership. And sometimes, as you say, we spend so much as an organization externally on market research, on intelligence, when we could have those very ideas coming out of our own teams, our own organization, or even our customers at times. So thanks for sharing that, James.
And I think the interesting thing on that second idea as well is it's also very useful. You and I, we do a lot of stuff in the Middle East together.
Yes.
And some organizations in the Middle East, we tend to find that the way that they're structured, and sometimes they're family businesses, large family businesses, is that there's a seniority, because the seniority often works on age. And there's some good things about that, because often that person is more experienced. They've seen all the things before. They've got a wealth of experience there. But in a country like Saudi Arabia, for example, huge young population. And there's this tension sometimes in organizations where you have the young generation coming through with these new ideas, new things that they want to do, very social, mobile generation. And then you have the older generation who've got the benefit of experience of seeing lots of ups and downs in economies. So how do you get those groupings playing together? How do you make those ideas kind of inclusive in that way? And I think that's the great thing that you can do with creativity, if it's structured in the right way. And the way that I do it is providing tools which mean that there's a parity of ideas in the organization. And that's sometimes you can deal with the cultural aspects. And not all organizations, and I've seen this in large family businesses as well in America. I've spoken in America, and that can suffer from those issues as well. But ideally, what you want to get together is you want to get that inclusiveness of ideas in the room, because you've got, if you think of an organization, 1,000 people, there's 1,000 ideas, at least 1,000 ideas within there.
Fantastic. And from what I know of your experience, you've worked in several different countries across several cultures. And we know that, be it the Middle East, be it India, be it Asia, Europe, the US, culture plays a role in how you can engage. And so organizations who perhaps engage you as an outside thought leader in this space, once you understand the culture of the organization, you're able to then use their strengths to really help them tap into it and use the tools and systems that from your experience are proven and tested, and they work. So that's wonderful. I'd like to take the chance just to pause and acknowledge we have Rodena from Abu Dhabi. Welcome, Rodena. Glad you could be with us. We have a mutual dear friend, Chandra Sharma. Lovely to see you and my mentor. Hey, you're looking so good, and you're always in great shape, inspiring as always. Radena shared a comment. I believe staff need to understand the business and process very well before they connect with external customers and enhance relations and make creative solutions to the organization. Yeah. Great point, Radena. Thank you.
That brings me on to a point that Radana's just saying. Radana's in Abu Dhabi, I think you said.
Yes, she is in Abu Dhabi.
So one of my favorite things whenever I'm speaking in Abu Dhabi is to go to the Louvre Gallery. And if you go through the Louvre Gallery there, you come to the section where there's all the pottery. And there's a piece of pottery there from about 8,000 years ago. It was made in an island just off the UAE called Marawa, I think was the name of the island.
Right.
Very ancient pottery. And the thing, whenever I go in it, the thing that it reminds me of is that one of the challenges sometimes with creativity, especially if I'm speaking more to Western audiences, is they think that creativity is all about the ego, the individual, the I. It's all like, it all comes from me, like the lone creative genius. And I'm pretty much against that idea. See, I believe a better way of thinking about creativity is we're thinking of ourselves as vessels, like pottery, like vessels for creative ideas and inspiration. Now, that inspiration may come from the gods. It may come from the community that you're part of, your co-workers that you're working, the culture in which you're in. In fact, it might even come from the place itself. You can go to places, right, and we can experience what we call the genius loci. The places themselves can inspire creativity. So whenever I go to Abu Dhabi, I always make a beeline, go to the Louvre Gallery, and they have great exhibits there. And there's that pottery, that's a very small little pottery. And it reminds me that creativity is not about the individual, the ego, the I. The creativity really is about the we. I talk about creativity being a team sport, and that just kind of reminds that if we think of ourselves as vessels for ideas and inspiration, it takes off some of the pressure from us as well.
Excellent. Rodina shares her appreciation and thanks you, James, for responding to that. We also have Bharat Jitani, who's heading Ascentive in India. He said, hi, James.
Hi there.
And we have a question from our mutual dear friend, Chander. He says, what would super creativity look like in 2022, James?
So I think super creativity, and the way I define super creativity just now, is about how we augment our human creativity with exponential technologies like AI, for example. So I'm seeing it happen in lots of different ways. One of the ones I've been talking to a lot of actually technology companies involved in engineering recently. And I'm actually talking to a company the other day. They do construction in the construction industry in North America. And it's amazing now because they were having a real challenge bringing in new younger workers in the organization, because those younger talent was feeling like, well, that's an old industry, construction. I want to do cool stuff. I want to be, innovative. Everyone wants to young people want to work at innovative organizations. So they're starting to do things now, like with augmented reality. So that worker, that electrician, for example, can have augmented glasses on, right, and as they're walking through the building, they're seeing where all the pipes are, they're seeing where the electrical lines are, they're seeing also using IoT with 5G that, oh, okay, that pressure valve there is only working at 27%. Okay, well, I wonder why that is, and why is that thing not working there? So super creativity is great because we can get to augment our human creativity, our curiosity, like asking why. Well, why is that not working? Why is that not happening? How can that be better? With these technologies like 5G or like IoT, right, like augmented reality, and it's the combination of those things, the human plus the machine, I think we're just going to see accelerating now. It's going to go even faster because people have got much more comfortable with technology now. I think it's, I Zoom with my grandmother who's in her 80s. Like, people are just becoming much more comfortable about it. So the bar has been lowered a little bit. So I'm very excited about it.
That's great. I definitely resonate here in this part of the world, in India, culturally. When I moved here a couple of years ago as my home base, you realize meeting in person is absolutely critical to your business development and relationship building, because it's a very family cultured sort of environment here. And if you told someone you were going to meet them virtually on a Zoom call, they would look at that as, not personal, you're not a priority, you're not important enough, and it'll be culturally insensitive. Now, one of the takeaways of the pandemic is that now people have very much accepted the the virtual space, that even if the hybrid opens up and has opened up for a small window earlier part of this year, people were accepting that, no, I'd prefer to do a Zoom call. We save time on logistics, etc. So the work from home in the last 18 months has certainly created opportunities for each one of us in learning. But that does there are different opportunities across industry. What I'd welcome your insights from your experience, because you work with hospitality, you've worked with technology, you've worked with pharma, several different organizations. What opportunities and learnings has the work from home in this last 12 to 18 months from your experience? What could you share?
Yeah, so there was. I always often think I was doing an event the other day. I try to remember who the speaker was. This is the fun thing I find, because normally when you and I, we do events, and usually I'm the opening keynote speaker, the closing speaker. So I turn up. Often I have to do the speech, then I have to get on a plane again. Yes. And what's been quite nice recently is I've been getting the opportunity to hear, because it's virtual, to spend a bit of time listening to some of the other speakers. Absolutely. And what I've been really impressed by is doing these kind of smaller events, which maybe only might have 100 people in them, but they're all very senior leaders, and getting to learn from really senior leaders, not professional speakers. They're not professional. That's not their thing. Is just kind of learning from them, kind of what's working and what's not working, how they've adapted. And I heard one speaker the other day, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who. It could have been someone from Kellogg's, actually. And they said something. They said when all this happened with the pandemic, there were some industries that meant to win, that were going to win, frankly, because of the nature of the pandemic. So, like, one of my clients is Reckitt Beckhiser, who make Lysol. So they were going to win. But there were other companies, even in that industry, in that fast consumer products company, that didn't do as well as you thought they should have done. So that's kind of surprising. And there were other companies in other industries you don't think should have succeeded. Like, so I'm in the professional speaking industry, I guess, and the speaking training business. And there were some, you think that, well, that should be a business that should be completely devastated because there's no live events. Correct. But myself and a number of other speakers, this has been like a boom time for us, because, and I'm not quite as this mad, but I was talking to a friend of mine, Jamil Qureshi, who's a great speaker in the UK, and he talks about leadership and motivation, and he did like 4 events in one day last week, in one day. Wow. And that would be possible for us to do.
You'd barely do 4 in a week if you could, traveling around.
So I think there's been lots of those people you don't think would have won, or industries don't think won, have kind of turned it to their advantage. So don't say just because you're in a certain industry where everyone's being doomsayers about this particular industry, that just because of that you shouldn't succeed. There's always opportunities. And the flip side goes, if maybe you've got clients who are working in an industry that really shouldn't succeed, that should have succeeded, aren't. And so have I made a really conscious effort at the start of all this about 18 months ago to focus on a couple of industries that I knew would win during this time. And those, for me, those industries were technology, because I could see what was going on. So I made it a real focus on outreach and working and with our bureau partners like yourself, really focusing on technology companies. I focused on pharmaceutical as well, and I focused on logistics. These are some of the industries I kind of focus on because I could see they were going to win. I do a little bit for the hospitality industry, but I've never been particularly big in that hospitality industry, so that didn't affect me quite as much. So, you know, that was quite good, but obviously affected a lot of the meeting planners that we would work with as well. So I think it's like, as we go into this next, we're going to go into a new cycle now as we come out of the pandemic. There's going to be other industries that are going to really win. You're already seeing them winning just now, like commodities. If you're in the mining industry, if you're in this, you speak, or you're in certain industries like that, they're going to win. Frankly, just now, maybe it's a good time to get. If anyone's a speaker just now, they haven't really spoken so much to the hospitality industry. Maybe now's a good time to start doing that.
Absolutely. We have a question from Rodena. She says, I notice people link creativity and innovation to technology only. What do you think of other areas that should be considered?
So I'll give you an example. You and I we've got a good mutual friend, David Avrin, who's a speaker. I think he's spoken in in India for you before he's come over.
And India, UAE, Bahrain, and Oman. We hosted him.
Yeah. He's great. So I'm a big fan of David. So David and I happened to be speaking at a conference together in 2019 in November. I think it was 2019. And it was in Bogota, Colombia. I'd never spoken in Colombia before. So I flew in the night before, and I had to speak the next morning. First thing, I was opening speaker, and then I think he was the closing keynote speaker. So I literally flew in the night before, did the gig the next morning, and then flew straight back out because I had to go and do another event somewhere. And but we had this one night, and I said to him, David, there's this restaurant I want to go to. When I've always wanted to go to this restaurant because it's kind of famous in Colombia. It's called El Cielo or El Cielo, and the reason it's famous is Colombia went through 50 years of war. And basically it was between the FARC guerrillas and the government, and they were at war with each other all the time. Plus they had obviously the issue with the drugs industry that was going on there as well. And as the war came to an end, there was a restaurateur, a young guy called Chef Barrientos, young guy. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to create a restaurant serving really interesting natively available foods using native ingredients of Colombia and the Amazon. But he wanted to create it as a training kitchen as well, like someone like Jamie Oliver would do in the UK.
Yeah.
What he did is he brought together former FARC guerrillas who had been injured, who had been disabled in some way. Maybe they had a leg blown off, arm blown off, something had happened, lost one of their eyes, and former government military people who had retired from the military. And he brought them together and he hired them and he got them creating and collaborating and making amazing Michelin-starred food together in a kitchen. So can you imagine this? You know, we talk about sometimes when you have two companies, one company buys another one, and that integration of the cultures. Can you imagine if you're having in a work environment where, like a few years before, you would have been literally killing each other? You know, that's pretty high level of having to figure that collaboration. So I said to David, I said, can we go to this restaurant? Because this is like a world-class famous restaurant. So David and I go to this restaurant, and it was a very romantic restaurant. And for those that you don't know, David's this big, like 6 foot something, with a big beard. And then there's me, but we kind of go for this dinner meal together. And it taught me a couple of things. It taught me there's always possibilities after conflict to bring people together, to collaborate, whatever that kind of conflict is, and to get people to do amazing things. But it also taught me about this idea of customer service. Customer service is amazing. David speaks about customer service as well, and customer experience. And it was like the most incredible customer experience. And it also taught me about creativity and innovation. So they were doing things in the kitchen which were very innovative, using different technologies, but they were also putting some amazing human creativity. And I'll give you one example. It came to one point in the meal where we had dessert. And what the dessert was, someone came up and you washed your hands in this bowl, this beautiful brass bowl with this beautiful kind of thing that you wash your hands, you cleaned your hands, you each cleaned your hands. And then what happened is you put your hands out, and they came over and they poured this warm, beautiful, dark, rich Amazonian Colombian chocolate, melted chocolate over your hands.
Wow.
And then you sprinkled it on your hands with these amazing nuts and seeds and different things from the outback there. And then what you did is where you ate your dessert was you basically licked it from your hands, and you licked all the chocolate and the thing and everything. And basically your body warmth would heat up the chocolate as well. And it created this amazing tastes and flavors and scents. Wow. And so David and I are looking across each other at this table, licking each other, licking our hands, looking at each other. And anyone from the outside must have been kind of, oh, this is good.
What is going on?
What's going on here? But I just thought it was a beautiful combination of creativity, customer experience, collaboration, getting over conflict. And the conversations that David and I had that night breaking bread, like you were doing just now, were amazing. We exchanged ideas. We thought about different ways of doing things. We gave feedback to each other. And I just thought, as amazing as virtual is, we're never going to create that in a virtual environment. That's what the benefit of still coming together, whether that's sort of a meal, breaking bread together, or going to an event, or going to a meeting or a retreat. That's the benefit of live events. It's that human thing. It's just, you just can't quite imitate it when it comes to virtual.
Fantastic. I think you answered 3 questions in one there, James. You covered Redena's quest for asking you how innovation and creativity can sort of connect beyond just technology, and you shared a great example there. And obviously, I was going to ask you about what does breaking bread mean to James Taylor. As you know, I wrote a book last year called Breaking Bread. And to some extent, that story you just shared was representative of collaboration, coming together, an emotional exchange. Anything else you want to sum up when it comes to breaking bread from your perspective?
I think the idea of breaking bread, one of the key things about creativity, and I speak a lot about creativity, is this idea of the third place, someone that's not your work and not your home. Yeah. And studies show us that we're only about 16% of our ideas are going to come when we're sitting at our desk in front of a computer. Most ideas don't come there for us. Most ideas come when we're together, when we're in a place that's maybe not our office and not our home. It could be a coffee shop. The coffee shop was first invented as a concept in the 1500s in Mecca and Medina. And then it came to Istanbul, and then it came to Vienna, and then like America and other places in the world. It could be in a pub. If you're in England, you go for a pint with a friend, or you go for a great meal with someone. The Romans, they called it the genius loci of a place. Sometimes places themselves, the actual physical environments you're in, can actually inspire ideas and creativity. I don't know what it is for you, Gautam, but for me, there's certain places in nature, like forests and places by water, often for me, that just I find ideas flow much easier for me.
Absolutely.
So, Gautam, I don't know what is it for you? Is there a place that you have in your mind, a third place that just kind of like ideas just come to you more naturally?
Well, for me, when I'm by the beach, taking a walk in gardens. So yeah, nature and water seem to be omnipresent for when I'm sort of very creative and innovative and an abundance of ideas, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyone that's watching this just now, think about yourself. Where is that place for you? And it's kind of quite useful to think when you get to those points in your life where you have to take stock, you have to take a pause, maybe you have to make a big decision. Go to that place if you can, because you're just in a better space, a better mental space to do your kind of more deep thinking, your more strategic, your more creative thinking.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have this meaningful conversation with you, learn from your experience, some great stories which are very inspiring, which is always awesome. Anything you'd like to share in summation? Anything you'd like to share? Any closing words before we wrap up?
No, I mean, what I would just say, if someone's watching this just now, they maybe got an event in person or virtual event, and they're looking for an inspiring speaker on creativity, innovation, AI, reach out to Gautam and Rinkesh and the team at Right Selection, and they can kind of share a little bit more about that. If someone's watching this just now who's maybe a speaker or a trainer or a coach, wants to learn more about that side of things, then you can head over to another site I've got called speakersu.com, and we've got lots of really kind of cool training there. In fact, I think I interviewed you a little while ago for one of those as well. So just head over to speakersu.com if you're interested about learning about how to kind of do the stuff that I do and the kind of stuff that Gautam's clients do and speakers do.
Fantastic, James. Thank you so much. I encourage everyone watching this video to follow James on LinkedIn. Stay connected. He constantly provides cutting-edge content from his wealth of experience in this area of super creativity. So stay engaged with James. And absolutely, if you'd like to engage him for any of your upcoming virtual events or physical events, if those countries allow, then it'll be an absolute pleasure to collaborate with yourself and James. Thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good evening and God bless.
Thank you, Gautam.